Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is AGK Karunakaran. I'm the Chief Volunteer for TIE, aka President of TIE Silicon Valley. Welcome, everyone. This is, first of all, the first event for the year. So, Happy New Year! And again, I have the privilege of opening up this, and introducing our own Naveen Bisht, who is sort of driving the MyStory session. But before we get there, let me also talk about what is in store for TIE. There's over the next 100+ days, we're going to have our marquee event, once a year event, TIECon, and we want people to start following TIECon on social media and all that stuff. And if you have not registered, we want you to start registering. The idea is that over the next 120 days or 100 less than 120 days, we'll have a lot of content, on multiple tracks, AI, ML, cloud, security, entrepreneurship, and crypto. There's a whole bunch of tracks our conveners have put together. So I strongly recommend you signing up if you have not already. And the other thing, of course, is that we have a series of learning sessions. Ties all about educating the entrepreneurs. We have opportunities for investment. We have mentoring. We've got networking. So all of that is what TIE is all about. And even here, you can look at the attendees and get to know, and through the chat session. Unfortunately, with all the pandemic going on, we are not able to do this in person. Hopefully, through the year, with everybody getting vaccinated, we'll be able to do that. With that said, let me introduce Naveen. Naveen has been a long-time charter member of TIE Silicon Valley. He's now the founder and CEO of a company called Akitra, and which is a cybersecurity and compliance automation company. And he's been a serial entrepreneur. He has done many, many companies. He's prior to this, he was a founder and CEO of Strax, SecureAct, Niner Networks, Kia Software, which was acquired by Novell. And then he's been, a major contributor to TIE. He's been parts of, various chairs of various initiatives within TIE. He was a board member of TIE Silicon Valley, and this year he's also, being coach as a co-chair of the security track at TIECon. So, in addition to all his entrepreneurial accomplishment, he has pursued his PhD studies at UC Santa Barbara, and he's got his master's in Texas Tech, and he has been an alumni of BITS, and he has multiple patents in the AI, security, and networking area, and published a lot of papers. Naveen, thank you very much for doing this regularly with lots and lots of speakers lined up. I think your program has got a backlog that shows that TIE is a great platform for the entrepreneurs to tell their story, and we can listen to them. So thank you very much, Naveen. I'll leave the floor to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, AGK. Appreciate your kind words. Good evening and morning to folks who are joining from the other parts of the world, from India, Pakistan, and eastern parts. So, and evening to folks over here on the West Coast. We really appreciate your being here because we have an amazing entrepreneur today. And so please, before we get started, keep your few questions ready for the Q&A portion. You can type it up in the Q&A portion of the screen, and we'll get going with that. So one of the questions which entrepreneurs, as well as even, I guess I would call it innovation labs in the big companies, and everyone always discusses about is when the market is ripe for innovation. The technology changes so rapidly, and cutting edge today is a legacy tomorrow. So why do markets, even after that, remain stagnant with little or no innovation for years? So this is the question Khalid Raja, who's our amazing speaker today, who is a visionary in routing protocols and large-scale network architectures, faced when he founded Viptela and created the software-defined wide area networking market. So at Viptela, Khalid created a solution that enabled companies to modernize their network for multi-site connectivity in a more affordable, flexible, and secure way. Cisco acquired Viptela in 2017 for 600 million in cash and assumed their equity awards. 3 years post acquisition, Khalid was faced with the similar question, and hence he started Graphiant to focus on the next generation of networking technologies. And in a career which has spanned over 25 years, he has played an instrumental role in architecting networks for global tier one carriers and Fortune 100 companies, and defining innovative solutions and architectures for the manufacturing, healthcare, and telecom industries. And over during his 17 years at Cisco, he was awarded the pinnacle of Cisco certifications like Cisco Certified Architect and Cisco Certified Design Expert. And earlier he worked at Hewlett Packard, where he was honored again as a distinguished technologist and created the vision for the company's next-gen data center as well as wide area network architectures. Khalid holds multiple patents in routing and security protocols and is the author of large-scale IP network solutions. He holds an MS degree from Wichita State University and BSW from NED University Engineering and Technology, and also was recently awarded honorary Doctor of Philosophy degree for distinguished achievement in technology at Wichita State University just a month ago in December. So with that, obviously, congratulations, Khalid, for that. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Khalid Raza to share his exciting, colorful, and amazing entrepreneurial and professional journey with us this evening. So let's give him a big round of virtual applause. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Khalid, and we'll come back for Q&A after your presentation.
Thank you, Naveen, and good evening and good morning, everybody. Can you guys see my slides, Naveen?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
Okay.
No, we do not see this.
Oh, no, not slides. Sorry, I'm sorry. I mean, we can see.
Okay, let me share my slides. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. So as Naveen mentioned, I was the co-founder of Viptela, acquired by Cisco, and now I'm founder and CEO of Graphiant. So I thought about, let's talk about my journey. So I thought it's always a good place to start, about birthplace, about your early childhood, the things that you were ambitious about, the thing you thought you could achieve, then education, then my first job, and what my first job took me through, what experiences I got, then the journey of an entrepreneur, what got me inspired into starting Viptela, and what the hardships, the difficulties, the rejections I felt during the whole process of starting Viptela, and what's next. Why did I leave again to start Graphiant? So originally I'm from Karachi. My parents were actually both immigrants from India. My mother is from Delhi. My father was from UP, and grew up in Karachi. All my early education was in Karachi. But one of the things that was very, very much in our family was education. My father, in 1952, after graduating from Aligarh, had an opportunity to go to Harvard. But unfortunately, he lost both of his parents in the span of 6 months. And he had to take care of his younger siblings. He gave up his ambition and supported the family. And my mother, same way, was a homemaker, but both of them were very, very focused on our education. We were four siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Both my brother and I are here. My brother has a master's degree. My brother has 150 plus patents. My sisters, one retired as a general manager. My other sister is is in education and has a master's in biochemistry. So my parents were very, very focused on education. So all my 3 siblings were heavily, heavily focused on education until my high school. And I had other plans. I always thought that Pakistan has found the next Imran Khan. Was focused on cricket from early morning till evening, always busy playing cricket. Both my parents were dead against it. So until my high school, I played a lot of cricket and was completely focused on making sure that by the time Imran retires, I am there to replace him as the new captain. So I went right after my school. I went out for a tryout in my college. So slightly different structure in Pakistan, and I think it's very similar in India. The high school is up to 10th grade. Then you go to 11th grade, which is considered a college, and then you go to university, which is where you get your undergraduate degree. So when I went out for my college tryouts, I realized, oh my God, these guys are way, way, way better than me, and I can't compete at this level. So let's go back to the basic principles and start focusing on studies. But one of the things that I always tell people, that one of the things that sports coach teaches you is this, you're not always number one. It's the failure. You start a game and you're losing badly in the first 10, 15 overs if you're playing cricket. But what you have to do is you have to complete the game. So not walking away from failure, not always being the best. It teaches you teamwork and giving you the ability to cope with failures. I mean, I have 3 kids. And one of the things I work even with them is to play sport. It teaches you teamwork and failure and how to cope with failure. So I always tell people a well-rounded person should go for sports as well. You might be good, you might not be good, but make an attempt to it, have a diversified experience, because a lot of these things that you go through teaches you so many different things and so many skills in life. So obviously, by the time I was in 11th grade, I realized this is not something I can do and I can be successful at. So on to focus on engineering and math. I was always good at math. So focused on engineering, and then got into the NED University, which was actually by the time in 80s, early 80s, when I joined the university in 83. There were only 2 engineering universities in Karachi. In such a big city, there were 2 undergraduate schools for engineering, and NED was one of them. And so getting into NED was a big deal. I got into NED, and obviously 4 years of engineering, but I was not just always somebody who was always 100% focused that studies is the only thing. I was actually, not many people know this, my university friends know it. I was into NED, into performance. I used to do stand-up. I used to write comedy scripts. I used to do plays in NED. So that actually gave me a lot of exposure and experience in public speaking. So when you're in front of 3,000 students, and if you're studied in Pakistan, and I'm sure same thing in India, when you have university events, most of people will show up to make fun of you, but it gives you confidence to stand up in front of so many people and speak with confidence. So it gave me the opportunity to be in an environment where I can come up, speak in front of people with confidence, and think on your feet. Really thinking at your feet really gives you the ability to adjust to your audience. One of the important things that I always tell for a CEO or an entrepreneur, when you are presenting in front of people, understand your audience. You come out with a message, but you should have the depth of understanding on the topic you're talking about, but quickly pivot and shift towards what your audience are receptive for. So having the experience and exposure at times of public speaking, taking up classes in the university in that area, I think helps. Then I was not too keen on coming to US. I always wanted to stay in Pakistan, and I actually found my life partner in NED. So she was 2 years junior to me. She was still studying in NED, doing her mechanical engineering, and I had graduated. So my father, who was so much obsessed with making sure that we go study abroad, was pushing me to go and study in US. And I don't want to leave. I have found a girl. Obviously, I wanted to stay back and just live a very happily married life. So one of the things he pushed and said, go find a university. This is around May timeframe. So most of university admissions are closed by that time. You don't, I told him that, look, I would go and apply for the job, apply for admissions in the spring semester. Let me stay back in fall and work in Pakistan for a couple of months. And he was adamant, no, go find a place where you can still go and start attending in fall, because he knew once I stayed back and I got a job, I am not going, because I wanted to get married and was obviously obsessed with saying, okay, let me settle down and let's just work in Pakistan. So found a university whose admission date was closing in July, got admission in Wichita State. I'd always had the plan that after my first semester at Wichita State, I will leave and go to California, go work, go get admission in San Jose State or come out to any university in California. But after the first semester, I was able to get an assistantship. So, and for those who are international students, you can relate to it, that we pay out of state tuition. It's very expensive. The dollar conversion rate is very high. When I came here, it was $1 to 25 rupees. So obviously you were getting some support from the family and you're realizing that this is expensive. So after my first semester, I got the research assistantship. So my tuition was waived. I was making decent money as a graduate assistant. So I stayed back and did my graduation from Wichita State, studied there, and then graduated in 1992. So 1992 was the year of recession. From 1992 to 1993, I was not able to find a job. And again, as an international student, you have a specific amount of time that you have to find a job. So my practical training was expiring in July of 1993. I was almost getting ready to pack my bags and go back to Pakistan, because if I wasn't able to find a job in 1993, by July, my status wasn't legal. And I wasn't planning to stay in the United States on an illegal status. So I get a job interview in May of 1993 with a small company by the name of Cisco Systems. So Cisco was a $600 million company in 1993. And I get my first interview with a guy named Joe Pinto, who's still my mentor, friend, who ended up being an SVP at Cisco. Now he's at Pure Storage. Joe is one of my advisors at Graphiant, always stayed as, he started as my first manager and always stayed as one of my closest personal friends. So I got this job interview and I had no background in networking, none. I had more worked in the databases, but had absolutely no background in networking. And at that time, Cisco wasn't able to get people who had any background in networking coming out of college. And so Joe tells me that, look, you have the right personality. You can get your point across. And I would give you that opportunity. So my first job in Cisco was in support, customer support, 1993. And I still have a t-shirt that which says our first billion. So when I joined Cisco, next year did their first $1 billion revenue. Obviously I started to work with a lot of customers, but my claim to fame inside of Cisco came in 1995 there was a very, very big service provider that Cisco was, this is pre-Google, pre-Facebook days, 1995, had a major outage in their network. And this is at the highest level of escalation. I tell people that there is a protocol for those networking people, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a protocol called Open Shortest Path First, OSPF. I just had the ability to read the databases and just came to me very naturally. So this is 1995, a tier one service provider is down. And literally for the first time, my phone was ringing where every top leader in Cisco is calling me to figure out what's happening. I log into their box and within 15 minutes, I figured out what happened, fixed the problem. And to a point that in 1995, this outage made headline news. It was on CNN that there was a big network that had an outage, and I worked on fixing it. And that gave me a lot of credibility inside of Cisco that, look, this guy knows how customers' network work. 2 years into his professional career, solved a very complex problem. So I was always a good troubleshooter. And one of the things I tell people that as you're building a product, always think of a 3 a.m. call. When a network goes down, how quickly you can isolate and troubleshoot it. A lot of products come out without the experience of actually people who can troubleshoot a problem. So in a lot of cases, that's so critical that that 3 a.m. call mindset is very critical as you're building a product. And especially in a networking product where everything depends on the network. The worst thing that can happen is a network going out and it failing. So as you build a product in our space, the networking, it's the 3 a.m. call. It's so important that the outage cannot impact the whole system. So that was my first claim to fame inside of Cisco. Then I did my certification, which used to be the Cisco certified, it's still there, Cisco certified internet networking expert. I did my certification in 1994, very early days. Then I became part of the Cisco certified design expert program. And I was the first global architect of Cisco certified architect. There were two of us who took the exam, and we were the first two architects, but that gave me a very holistic view of looking at customer networks, understanding customer networks, and fixing customer networks. So my journey in Cisco was very interesting, from services support to network architectures to building some tier one networks and the exposure that you start to get on these very, very large scale network and the problems they face. I had taken so many 3 a.m. calls that any product that I build today, I have this built in that, can I isolate the problem and can I troubleshoot it? Now, where did Viptela started? So remember the guy who in 10th grade wanted to become a cricket player, get to meet his idol when I started to work with this hospital that Imran was building in Shaukat Khanam Hospital. And I got to know a lot about the hospital system, the problems in countries like Pakistan, very similar to countries like India. This was the only cancer hospital in Pakistan. And interestingly, breast cancer is one of the largest problem in Pakistan with women. Actually, the women in Pakistan, and that's not the same statistics in India, the women in Pakistan have the second highest rate of breast cancer in the world. But interestingly, breast cancer at stage 0 is a regular surgery, and stage 4 is a sunk cost. So I started to understand more and more that how do these larger hospital systems not able to connect with these ambulatory primary healthcare units and offer their services through those, so that if your primary care is more trained to actually identify some of the early diagnosis, there is a lot of saving in that whole system. So I started to work with some of these guys and said, how can we build an ecosystem of channel partners that your product, which is healthcare service, is delivered through these extensive channel partners? And not just Pakistan, it's a global problem that I started to look at healthcare in the United States and realized that there are 380,000 ambulatory care providers in the United States. And the continuum of care is so badly broken that once the patient is discharged from from the hospital, there is no efficient continuum of care all the way to your primary provider. And that is when I started to see that this ecosystem needs to get created, that how do you deliver this service of building this large connected system where the provider of primary care is not as integrated into the hospital system, but they are for services. So I started to look into this and I realized that what is needed is to build this private infrastructure at scale over the public internet. How do you build for that? So this is where my story of Viptela started to take more shape. In 2009, I walked in the hallways and corridors of Cisco and saying, we have a problem in the way we are offering these whole wide area services to the enterprise, because the service providers have no incentive to change it because they control the whole ecosystem of delivering private service to the enterprise. And deeper, I realized the existing vendors had no incentive to change it as well, because the service was offered to the service providers who were the multi-billion-dollar partners. So from 2009 to 2010, end of 2010, I presented this idea of Viptela to so many people inside of Cisco. And the lesson learned for entrepreneurs, that when you're coming up with a very new disruptive idea, you will face most amount of rejection. Not people thought that this idea didn't had any value. People thought that it's going to disrupt our ecosystem. So 2 years of consistent rejection, and kept on presenting it to so many people. And again, I would say Pinto, who was my first boss, was one of the guys who was enabling this. I was presenting it to a lot of people, but it didn't go anywhere. So finally, I was actually one day very frustrated about it. And this is something I was talking to, by that time, I got to know Imran fairly well. I haven't communicated with him in a while since he's become the prime minister. But that time he was still doing Shaukat Khanum. So I spoke to him about it, and he said, you know what, one of the biggest mistake people make is give up their dreams. You are talented. People will find you. So the jobs will find you, but do not give up your dream. So go and try and fail, and it's fine to fail. But if you haven't failed and your idea 4 years from now, 5 years from now, somebody does that idea, you will regret it that I didn't take the chance. So for anybody who's coming with a disruptive idea, the amount of rejection I saw for the first 2 years in Cisco did not demotivate me, because I spoke to somebody who said, look, I have seen so many failures in my life, but never give up your dream. So I took the risk. I left Cisco, went out. Now here's the story becomes even more interesting. The rejections keep on increasing. I started to look for money starting January of 2012. We started to go VC after VC after VC. And about 20 to 25, so it was two of us, Amir and myself. We used to go look for money. Not a single VC was willing to invest in us. There were a few fundamental problems with us. With certain VCs, you're a first-time entrepreneur. So, okay, you have experience out of Cisco, you haven't done a startup. That's the problem. A lot of other VCs were saying, okay, so you're telling me you want to take on Cisco and tier one telcos at the same time and disrupt a $50 billion existing market. And in 2012, SD-WAN was a $0 market. So nobody was willing to believe in the idea. Nobody was willing to invest in us because there were things that were fundamentally wrong with us. Not for once, I doubted the idea. I was 100% sure there is a lot of merit in this idea. So this is what I tell people, why I still say, and I publicly say, why Sequoia is the number one VC in the world, in my opinion. I show up to Sequoia and my current investors, Bill and Mike. So had a 30-minute call with Bill. Bill had come out of Google And Bill grilled me for about 2 hours. And we come out of this meeting and you realize, A, he got it. B, when we went back to the Sequoia meeting, the feedback we got was, oh, you guys want to take on Cisco and AT&T at the same time. What every other VC was telling us, I'm not sure you should take on big telcos and big vendors at the same time. Sequoia tells us, oh, you're going to take these big guys on at the same time. We love it. We love people with courage and guts. The idea that are disrupted disrupts so many business models. And guess what happened? The first company to get funded in SD-WAN was Viptela. And most of people who rejected us ended up invested so much money went into SD-WAN. And so many companies got funded in SD-WAN. And if you look at that, what happened today, SD-WAN, which was a $0 market in 2012, with 25 VCs rejecting the idea until Sequoia jumped in, is an $8 billion market now and growing. Now, in 2017, Cisco acquires Viptela. Back is in $610 million. Viptela business was doing very, very well when I left Cisco into 2020. And SD-WAN is getting very established and it's growing. And then some of the models which is actually being adopted, and COVID exposed a lot of things, is that you would require a much, much larger scale edge connectivity model. So the scale that we solved for in 2012 is changing at a much higher rate. And the problem that after my acquisition inside of Cisco, from 2019 to 2020, I kid you not, guys, it was a deja vu. I started to have the same discussion saying, guys, Viptela was 30% of my vision. The 70% of the work is still not finished. Again, I realized in 2 years, I'm not criticizing Cisco. Big companies have their own business model. They take time to pivot to some very disruptive concepts. 2012 to 2017, SD-WAN took off. So in 5 years, we built a market. But that was 30% of my vision. My vision is much, much bigger than what we need to do. We need to work on. And I want to complete my mission. And hence, Graphiant. I left Cisco in 2020, went back to my investors and says, I have an incomplete mission, which I actually want to solve because I've been working with internet backbone since 1994, every major telco wide area network since 1999. 2012, we created SD-WAN. We are heading towards a very, very different environment, which I say everybody talks about edge compute. Edge compute, the data gravity shifting towards the edge is very different than me watching Netflix. The edge data is much more private, secure, and compliant. We are heading towards the industrialization of the internet, where the data sources are so much more distributed. They have to be so much more protected at the orders of magnitude we haven't seen. And the topologies we had built for a content delivery network, which was client server, is going to become a lot more arbitrary any to any for low latency, privacy, compute processing at the edge. So for me, the step one was SD-WAN, which is 30% of the vision. The next step in my journey is the industrialization of the internet, which I'm very excited about. So with that said, I want to leave you with a few things. Guys, don't give up dreams. If you believe in your idea, don't let rejection stop you. And always have if you have imagination, always be a dreamer. I love the quote from Einstein. Imagination is more powerful than knowledge. Don't accept status quo in any technology that you're learning. Always think I can make it better. And with your imagination and perseverance, you will always, always be successful. With that, thank you very much. And back to you, Naveen.
Thank you, Khalid. Really, really amazing story. And so let's start with my first question. Then hopefully, then we have this audience will begin to ask. So one thing I know you kind of shared like how you wanted to be the next Imran Khan in early on, and then So I was wondering if you think about, did you have a backup plan, or were you like at any point in your childhood? I asked this question to many of entrepreneurs, that which kind of, if you go back and reflect, inspired you that you wanted to become an entrepreneur?
No, I never thought I had it in me until 2012. There are a couple of people who influenced me.
Yeah.
So initially, obviously, there was no backup plan because I couldn't play cricket, because I realized I wasn't at that level, and my father wouldn't let up, saying, "Okay, you gotta be a professional. So education is the key. Education is the key." And South Asian kids can relate to it. The firmness that comes from the household and the parents is like, you can't escape that. So
Yeah.
that plan was pretty much shot down by 11th grade, that I have to build a professional career. Entrepreneurship is something that I started to think more in 2011 and 12. There are a couple of guys, like I would say Imran was one of the guys who told me to be a dreamer. I had another good friend, Dino Farinacci at Cisco. Dino convinced me of the idea, the merit of the idea. And Dino is one of those early internet guys. So he's the other guy who pushed me. He says, go take the risk. And then my partner, Amir, had done startups. And Amir also pursued this whole thing with me, that we have to take this chance. So I think now when people talk to me, ask me about entrepreneurship, I tell people, always have an ambition to be an entrepreneur. Just don't accept the status quo and live your life in a box of a corporate. Take a risk. If you're talented, take a risk and believe in yourself. And corporate will always find you. Don't look for corporate jobs. Corporate jobs will always find you.
Okay, thank you. So let me second. Another question is, I know you went straight to the VCs in the first one. Obviously, there was a great story you mentioned, like how you went to these 25 VCs and then finally Sequoia jumped in. And so, but did you also think at that point that I mean, I guess the question I'm getting at is, you didn't go with the route of let me get some angel funding and get a little bit of proto done, or rather just go straight to the VCs?
Actually, we did think about that. So one of the things I did was I went out and got a consulting contract, because I had a lot of relationship with a lot of big enterprise accounts. Because when you are up at 3 a.m. in the morning with the CIO of a company trying to fix their network, you build strong relationships. So I found a consulting contract, $500,000. And that's how we were funding the initial company between the two of us. One of my very good friend, Raghib Hussain, who was the founder of Cavium, now he's at Marvell. Raghib said this to me, and I took it to the heart. He said, if you want to build a big company, go find VC money. If you want, you can gradually make things, versus I believed our idea was very big. I believe that. And he said, if your idea is big, then don't limp along. Go find a VC. And then we had a couple of people who were willing to give us angel money, but that discussion with Raghib convinced me that at least I should give it a time to go raise VC money. Yeah. And bigger idea needs big money.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. So there's a question from from Farouk. Can you talk about landing your first customer? Was there an MVP? Did your investors help in getting your customer meetings, etc.?
Actually, our first customer was a healthcare provider. And their landing that first customer was that, interestingly, the problem that we had highlighted with the service providers, that customer was in healthcare. They were experiencing it. They were trying to expand the network, and the service provider came back and said, you can't expand your network there is a wide area technology, because I have to upgrade my network first before you can upgrade and expand your network. And they said, service providers has too much control over my network. I need my control back.
Right.
So this major healthcare provider gave us an opportunity for 7 sites.
Oh,
that just completely changed the game on us, because that leader from that healthcare provider presented at ONOG, which is a public forum. And then we got our next big customer, which was a retailer. So once a big customer starts to believe in your idea, especially in healthcare, that has a triggered effect. So winning the first customer was most difficult, but I think we were, in that sense, we had so much clarity about customer problems because we were working with customers so closely throughout our careers. We were able to see what the issue was. And when you touch the right problem, the response of customers are much faster than you expect, but rather than sitting in your box and saying, this is the way we're going to solve the problem.
Right, right, right. So the second one other part of that question Farooq asked was, did your investors also were helpful in getting some customers contacts wise?
Absolutely. When you are funded by Sequoia Capital, Sequoia has a lot of relationships. So
yeah,
absolutely. And again, that's the other part of the question, that why didn't we take angel money? We were going after large enterprises.
right.
So when we were winning one of our largest deal, which is 3,000 bank branches, they wanted to know how viable business you are. And that is when Sequoia got on a call with them and says, we have huge funds, and Viptela is one of our strongly backed companies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to go after SMB market, then angel funding works. If you're trying to go after big enterprise market, they want to see strong backing. So Sequoia definitely helped with customer connecting with CIOs, and obviously showing the financial strength helped us.
Right, right. Absolutely. Very good point. So the next question is from Farhan Siddiqui. It's a great message, Khalid, known for 30 years. What are the top challenges for SD-WAN in 2021? As you mentioned, only 30% has been addressed by Viptela, Cisco, but 70% is still unexplored.
SD-WAN's biggest challenge, I don't know how nerdy you want me to get here, is the customers wanted three things out of SD-WAN, and I'm going to go a little nerdy because that's my baby. I can talk about it. Customers wanted three reasons for SD-WAN. Number one, they wanted the agility of the last mile. I can use any internet circuit and I'm good to connect. That was number one reason. Second is they wanted their application visibility and control, which they had lost to the service providers. And third, they wanted their policy back. They got all three of them back. They did not realize SD-WAN came to solve the problem of data still residing in your two data centers. The data has completely decoupled and it's moving exponentially in a cloud environment. So the amount of number of SD-WAN connecting tunnels you have to create is just exploding. And the edge compute is just going to explode that even further. So the scale, nobody had thought about the scale that's coming. Mm-hmm. It's now hitting people. And that scale problem needs to be solved by people through innovation, not through automation. A lot of people's answer is automation. There is limit to automation. There comes a time you have to innovate. And that is, the time has come for innovation.
Absolutely great answer. So next question is from Rusali. Is there any part of being an entrepreneur or founder that you do not enjoy? And if so, how do you cope with it?
The best thing of being a leader is people. The most difficult thing of learning the skill is how to handle people. Mm-hmm. Once you start to enjoy that, I tell people to read a lot of books on cultural codes, how to build culture. And this is one skill set that as much as you read, you still get on the job learning. People, from my experience, people are looking up to you and you are your worst critic. So always look at how can you make a successful culture to build long-term company. And that's the experience that comes from experience and learning. And when I look at myself, I still think on a scale of 100, I'm about 30, 40% there. You have to so much learn from people, about people, how to run a successful company. And some days you enjoy that role. Some days you don't enjoy that role, how to actually keep your people happy. And that's the most critical part of the job of running a company and being an entrepreneur. Keep your VCs happy, keep your customers happy, keep your employees happy. And that's something that you at times enjoy, at times it stresses you out. But that's the learning. And that's the most critical learning for any entrepreneur. Once you have the money and the skill set, is to how to keep your people happy.
That's obviously I guess I call it like playing with the chess, but they are not like one, two, three. They're like similar. How do you juggle with between them, right? Thank you. So next question is from Chatrapal Singh. He says, "You are my role model. I saw your CCAR interview. There, I did my CCIE in RNS in 2013 and currently supporting enterprise customers for providing solutions in WAN and SD-WAN. I just want to know to be CCD or do some studies in cloud networking to provide hybrid solutions. So I guess I don't know what question Chatrapal is asking. So probably something if you want to advise, give him some guidance there. Looks like that's where
My guidance to everybody is just don't accept the status quo.
yeah,
Change things what you can, disrupt things.
that's great. So next question is from Sahir Iqbal. How many failures, challenges one should expect their way when trying to become an entrepreneur?
2 years of rejection from your own company, 2 years. 25 VCs, 25 VCs, everybody saying, so if you believe in your idea, absolutely do not give up. And failure should not matter. If you think your idea has strength, I mean, I was rejected for about 3 years consistently. Tier 1 VC after tier 1 VC telling me that I'm out of touch with reality. And this is not sustainable for a first-time entrepreneur to take on such a big challenge. And I actually talk about this. The Cisco's biggest loss in enterprise branch routing in their history was to Viptela, ever. So it takes courage to stay consistent. But 3 years, my whole journey of failure was 2.5 years.
Thank you, thank you. So actually, in the same, I'm a sequel to that. Uday Gokarn, he's asking, what challenges did you overcome them when scaling up Viptela? So that I guess the next, after 2.5 years of at least challenges you have overcome, then you had the other challenge of scaling it up. Even though, if you want to elaborate a little bit on that side.
I think we had a good team. So we had a very good team. I mean, my VP of product management, Ramesh, was a very capable guy. My VP of engineering, Venu, was a very capable guy. My VP of sales, James Weinbrenner, was a very capable guy. My VP of North America, Matt Krieg, extremely capable guy. I mean, Matt knew how to get customers. So having the people who are strong and understand how to build business, you can't do it by yourself. Another guy who's with me again at Graphiant, Adnan Ansari, operations wise. So very, very strong people who are opinionated. You need to have strong opinionated leaders. B, know how to build business and know how to challenge. So always look for areas that you're weak in. I always look at where I'm weak and I look at person who's better than me in a certain area. So to scale, I knew I wasn't a strong operations guy. I got a strong operations guy.
Right.
So from that perspective, look at your weaknesses as a leader. If your people who work for you, if you're better than them, then you have done a very poor job of hiring. In their specialized areas, they have to be better than you. And that's when you've done a proper hiring.
No, that's a very good point, Khalid, you're mentioning. Because I remember, actually, I still remember about 20 years ago, there was Prakash Bhalerao, who is a very successful entrepreneur still. You know, he had a number of companies. So one time he came and he was speaking. What happens is when we grow up, you know, as Desis, I mean, for the communities from South Asia. So he said, like, we go to these top schools, and then when we come out, we go to these convents and go to top schools, and we come here. We think like we are the best CEO, we are the best CTO, we are the best CFO, we are everything best. Then suddenly you realize that's not what it is. You need to figure out fast. Yeah. So very good point you're bringing up, which, like, you know, all of us entrepreneurs, you know, every time have to remember that how to detect what your weaknesses are and complement them with the strengths of others. Same thing in others, detect their weaknesses, complement them with other team members who complement them. Yeah.
And it's very critical that people in the room should have a dissent. My co-founder, Stefan, and Stefan and I hardly agreed when he used to work at Viptela.
Yeah.
I surrounded by people who question, and then I surround myself with people who disagree with me. And you have to hear the dissent, because that's an opinion you probably didn't think through.
Right. Absolutely. So that's a very good insight for everyone, all of us here. So the next question is from Mahesh Venkat. It says, as healthcare applications and other applications move to public cloud, isn't SD-WAN issue isn't it addressed by AWS, Azure, and Google, basically cloud providers?
Yes and no. The data is being moved to the cloud, but the data in healthcare will be generated at the edge. So the data that is being shifting at the edge, the data gravity is changing. So actually in your question, your answer is embedded in your question. So yes, the processing and consumption of the data will be moving to the cloud, but as you start to move towards the healthcare industry is a highly regulated industry. They do not have a luxury of upgrading the SDK every 6 months. The data that's being generated at the edge requires a much more privacy, security, and compliance. The kidney dialysis machine that passed compliance might be running a Windows 98 or Windows 2000 server. You cannot treat that device as same thing as upgrading your iPhone. So that's that model of the device that's sitting at the edge, which is carrying very regulated compliance data, and that data has to be shared. Network has to solve that problem, because you can't upgrade those devices at the frequency, and that data sharing will not be done only at the cloud, might be at a peer-to-peer. We're heading towards surgery as a service. So that type of services, as you're heading towards them, there will be a lot of low latency peer-to-peer communication. So it's not just, the problem would not just be solved by putting and uploading the data to the cloud. We have to think different. As I said, we're heading towards industrialization, where the data gravity is more shifting towards the edge. What is next? It's not centered just around cloud.
Yeah, that's next question is from Jamal, a philosophical question. The pace with which the technology is accelerating, should it be controlled or reined in? If yes, how? If not, why not? Looks like
You're asking the wrong guy. I never believe in reining in technology, but that's a very philosophical question. Somebody would say, are we heading towards giving our everything in our life to the machines? So there is a disruption that will be caused in the society, but that's a one-on-one debate. That's not a public debate, and I don't want to express my personal opinion on that.
Yeah. So, well, I guess it depends on the country also, right? Whether they're raining or not raining.
Yeah.
Well, next question is from Hemant Mantri, and the question is, there is a meme going on recently. I hated working 9 to 5, so I started a business. Now I work 24/7. Did you ever feel that way? So how do you manage time and get better at delegation?
I'm still trying to learn that. There are two sides to it. Yes, you will stop working at a certain hour, but your mind does not stop working about the business. Unfortunately, as much as I try to, there are a few things I do. I do very regular exercise. I make sure that I do morning walks, and there are certain times I just completely defocus and have discussions with my wife about things that matter outside of work. But I seriously, as an entrepreneur, your mind is still always thinking, what can I do? What can I change? What can I build? So I would be lying if I said that I know how to detach. You stay obsessed with your work because you enjoy changing, you enjoy disruption. Right. When you enjoy disruptions, then it's not easy to just let go of those ideas, and it energizes me. I mean, when I wake up in the morning excited that we're going to change things. So yeah. It depends on how you treat this whole idea of innovation and disruption. If you treat it as a job, then obviously you can disconnect at 5. But if you treat it as a passion and make it, changing things, then your mind will continue to work on it.
That's absolutely true. I can relate to that. Working hard. So one question, let me ask before there is other questions also. In an article, I was going through some of your very nice blogs you had written. I was trying to find the recent ones, but in network world, number of articles during your Viptela days, I think later part. So one of the articles that was in 2017, you talked about how immersive technologies such as VR and augmented reality traffic streams will be the next wave of disruption for networks. And there is a very high probability that these VR and AR will produce unprecedented levels of data that will be transported across the network. So how far do you think we are? It's 5 years from 2017 article. How far do you think we are from that vision, or do you think it will take a while? And how do you see, or maybe, because anytime it's like IoT is also many times when you talk to VCs, they think that's a graveyard, right? From VC perspective. So it's like, but there was so many articles. Even I remember John Chambers used to talk about all this $1 trillion industry and everything. But when later on it kind of changes, or maybe the way it's positioned, etc. So I wanted to see if you reflect back of VR, AR 5 years ago now, and how do you see it in the future?
I think the biggest problem for that industry to take off is the network. We have forgotten how the network needs to solve that problem. If you look at the last decade, all the big companies are content delivery companies. So that is a client server model, Google, Facebook, Apple. VR, AR is about low latency, anywhere to anywhere, peer-to-peer communication. So 5G solves the bandwidth problem. 5G solves the latency, symmetric bandwidth problem, latency problem, but everybody forgot about how the network needs to solve that problem. I believe the biggest challenge in this space is the network. And everybody just said that we built network 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago for fixed topologies. This is about arbitrary topologies. And we have to go, the network architects who've written protocols all their life have to go back and reflect on how we're going to solve that problem. Network is the biggest challenge.
Let me go to one question again from here, which relates to your 5G. From Sahir Iqbal, what are your thoughts on wireless and 5G private LTE taking over the enterprise space? Just want to know your thoughts.
I don't comment on things that I don't have a lot of depth in, right? I understand very superficially, of course, that privacy is needed to provide any-to-any enterprise level segmented connectivity, that you're going through a public infrastructure and your connectivity is very private. Again, the middle network, which is sitting in the way, is not very well designed for it. And that problem needs to get solved. On the last mile side of it, obviously, private 5G is something that is needed at the connectivity level, but how would you exchange at the orders of magnitude through the current internet flows? That problem needs to be solved.
Yeah,
and
very good point.
Yeah, so as I've said, people forgot about networking. People forgot networking in the last decade and just focused on provisioning connectivity to the cloud. AR, VR will take off once the network problem is solved. I think surgery, I think gaming will change significantly if we can establish this whole massive peer-to-peer communicated networks.
Yep. I think that's a very good point. If I remember also late, like 2006 to 10 or 12, they won't even fund any networking company. They say, how are you going to compete with Cisco, Juniper, right? So that's, and where everything else was getting funded, right? A lot of social media to everything. So you forget other part, then obviously this, the SD-WAN stuff started, then companies started getting funded. Now again, things like that. So you can keep seeing these cycles. So next question is from Bobby. It says, it took you 2 years to leave Cisco with Viptela idea. How long did it take you with Graphiant idea?
2 years. I walked around Cisco saying, guys, let me finish my vision. So I have a 2-year cycle of rejection inside of Cisco. 2009 to 2010, a decade later, deja vu, talking to people and saying, this is 30%. There is a lot that needs to get resolved. And it took me 2 years. And then luckily, it didn't take me 25 VC rejections. This time I just went back to my investors and said, I give them a fair chance. Let me go back and reignite the change I had started, and let me go fix it once for all for decades to come.
So then, yes. So obviously this time was much easier from that perspective, of course.
I just spoke to 4 VCs and took money from 3. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's congratulations. And obviously you deserved it from what you provided back to them. 2 of them already got it before. So we are already at 7. Do you have 5 minutes? Because there are a few more questions.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
Sure. Okay.
No problem
So the next question, I have one. Again, this is related to, because I was kind of, usually I was searching through a good part of being in internet these days. You can find all articles and whatever you've been written. So in one of the live interview in Cisco, I think before you left in 2020, you talked about, again, this is related to how enterprise edge is going to look like in next 5 years. So I just wanted to see if you can elaborate on that here for the audience also. And then if there are any new opportunities for startups to start new companies, other than, of course, you are doing something new, not that you want you to disclose until your product is out, but.
I mean, look, the data gravity, as I said, is shifting towards the edge. More and more data would be generated at the edge, and you can just push raw data on the cloud, because you'll have a bandwidth problem, cost problem if you keep on pushing that much data. So the data is going to get converted into information. Yeah. And that information will have so many different consumers who would want to actually consume that information, because data is the next oil. So anybody who has the ability to generate data, there is somebody who wants to consume that data, especially in the, so if you look at healthcare, if you look at manufacturing, right? Healthcare, actually COVID highlighted some very serious deficiencies in the healthcare system. The elective surgeries are not being performed because of emergency care. A lot of elective work will go towards ambulatory services, ambulatory units. And as you go towards ambulatory care services, a lot of data is going to get generated, which was earlier confined to hospitals. So hospitals lost a lot of money in this whole COVID, because the revenue generation part is elective surgeries, not emergency care. So how the revenue generating part is going to get decoupled with third-party partnerships, and that data that's going to get generated will have such an interesting continuum of care, from primary care to hospital to insurance. And that data sources are now at the edge. And how is so it's completely shifting. So how do you build for that? How do you account for that? So I think the next 5-7 years are so exciting. As I said earlier, we're heading towards an industrialization of the internet. And how do we actually account for that? How do we build for that? That's going to be the most exciting times in our industry. And edge compute is the biggest change that is coming our way.
That's So with that, sequel to another question Farhan is asking is, as a technology and networking leader, what do you see any new disruptive technologies ahead in pandemic time?
Wait for Graphiant.
Good answer. Okay, so let me. So my last question is also similar. Khalid, is basically any words of wisdom for aspiring entrepreneurs in the audience, and what trends and you've kind of alluded to many of them anyway, but like any trends and opportunities that you see today. Let's say you're already working on Graphiant, but there is another idea, you say someone else should start. So what would that nugget you would like to provide to some, the risk-taking entrepreneur in the audience who may want to jump into it?
I mean, look, I will always speak with my view of the world. I think the 3 biggest changes I think are coming is, as I said, the industrialization of the internet, service economy. Anybody who's selling a product tomorrow will be selling a service. So we are clearly, the businesses would be interacting directly with the customer, not walking away from that product, because if you walk away from your product that is generating data, somebody else will monetize it. So think about the rise of the service economy. And the third piece of it is that you need AI and ML to be as embedded in the network to understand how to react to changes, how to impact the security effects, how to monitor what's going on. So those 3 changes from networking point of view are happening. The machine learning, and AI in the network, industrialization of the internet, and heading towards a service economy. These 3 things, from my perspective, are happening. And we, as architects have to account for that.
Mhm.
For aspiring entrepreneur, be a dreamer, never give up. Easy. Don't give up easy. 2.5 years is not an easy time. Everybody stops believing in you. Myself and my partner did not stop believing. Everybody else stopped believing in us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Khalid. I really appreciate your time. So I think we are done, and we really enjoyed having you. Very insightful, and I really appreciate you taking this time out from your family and being with the audience. And so, guys, we'll have another My Story in February. We'll announce in few days. And with this first one, with an awesome story Khalid shared about his journey, and we really appreciate and we thank you again for being here. All right.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.